I glanced through a couple of playthroughs and reviews of Forbidden Stars, and quite a few people consider it a heavy game with lots of different elements. Seriously, the rule set is mostly straightforward, unlike more complex wargames. It's like basic arithmetic compared to calculus on steroids. Is it me, or are some gamers too namby-pamby? So this is the original post of a thread that appeared earlier this week. It appeared on Monday, October 19th. And when I saw the subject line, I was immediately intrigued because I wasn't sure what this term, more squishy, meant, or what was meant by it. I read through this original post. I saw this very soon after it appeared. Read through it. Have not played. Don't know anything about Forbidden Stars. But again, I was intrigued by the posters here. The posters concluding question here, is it just me or are some gamers too namby-pamby? Still wasn't sure what the original poster here was getting at, but as we have gone through the week, I've gone back many times to track the various posts, responses, and it's been interesting. It's been interesting. I chose to pull out a bunch of pieces of the ongoing dialogue, and this is not meant to be any type of comprehensive anything. Just more, if you've been following this closely, you of course will know exactly what I'm talking about. But if not, maybe these bits and pieces will give you a sense of what's going on with this thread. Pretty much. Okay, so these are all quotes pulled out of many different responses. Pretty much all the people I know who play FF, I guess that's Fantasy Flight games, are wargamers. I think the vibe of this post represents a very exclusive side to wargaming. Break. To Eurogamers, heavy isn't about rules complexity, it's about depth. They rate Go and chess as heavy. Interesting. Break. If we are going to go off of anecdotes, I know plenty of Eurogamers who play Fantasy Flight games. Break. Most games are targeted towards casuals, so you'll be hard-pressed to find games as challenging as the ones from the 80s to early 21st century. But the ratio of hard games to easy games is significantly smaller than it was a few decades ago. Break. I wonder if some old grog nerds will ever understand that the mental energy required to play a game well has very little correlation to the length of its rulebook, and hardly more correlation to the time it takes to play the game. Break. While I personally don't care for war games because the theme does not appeal to me, I do prefer heavy strategy, brain burner games. If the war game theme did appeal to me, I would feel intimidated and unwelcome in the community based on some of the attitudes portrayed in this thread. Break. I think people still dig complex, meaty content story. If a game does that without a massive barrier to entry, it will pull an audience. Break. I wonder if non-wargamers will ever understand that wargamers don't play games with long rulebooks because they're mental challenge or mentally exhausting. Break. I agree, and I'm often baffled and embarrassed by the pointlessly unwelcoming, off-putting Eurobashing which often goes on in wargame threads. Many of these same Eurobashing wargamers will lament how there are not enough newer wargamers entering the wargame hobby. Break. It's clear that all across the board gaming landscape, including wargames, as well as the video game landscape, there's a tendency towards simplifying, streamlining, and shortening games. Break. I don't get why many old-timers simply refuse to admit that times have changed and that wargames have to adapt to our changed lifestyle as well. This doesn't mean to get dumbed down. Designers just need to be more clever to come up with wargame designs that capture the same experience in a shorter amount of time. Break. I think the original poster is myopic to think that wargames are not being affected by trends in the larger board game industry. In my amateur opinion, publishers are incorporating more thematic elements, more investment in graphic design and component quality, and greater replayability in their designs. So it goes on, and I think one poster I remember pointed out that underneath the how do I put it? Beneath the stinging back and forth engaged by some in this thread, there are actually some interesting underlying topics, questions, and I actually feel the same way. I think there are some interesting underlying issues and topics, questions about simplicity and complexity, playability or lack of playability, a war theme, games with no war theme but still strategic. I do think there are lots of interesting underlying questions, and although this thread has become, I think, fairly contentious at points, I think that there are arguments here that that should be made, and I don't agree with some posters who seem to take the opinion that that the discussion as a whole is a waste of time and actually should not be engaged in at all. I have trouble accepting that. I guess I'm of the idea that if there are strongly held views by people who are looking at war games from outside, and if there are strongly held views held by those who consider themselves war gamers looking outside the war game genre, I think that these points of view should be made. So join an ongoing chat. It happens every Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join in, talk about all different things related to war games. Sometimes we talk about what's been on Board Game Geek recently. Sometimes we talk about our gaming experiences, games we're looking forward to purchasing and playing. So you can join in the conversation. It is opening, unlike this thread. I think that the chat every Saturday is friendly and welcoming. All different views are welcome. It is at this link. All you need is this link. This link will take you right there. You do not need a download. You do not need a username, password, or anything like that. It's open. Join in. You can also just listen, but it is a good place to get together, see and hear other gamers. So Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at this link.